All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar today. The topic is Lean Manufacturing in AX 2012. My name is Charlotte McCormick and I work for eBECS, who is a Dynamics AX CRM and BI partner. We focus solely on ERP, CRM, and data analytics, and just to show you kind of some of the expertise that we have, Microsoft has awarded us awards. So for example, we won the 2013 Global Partner of the Year, and we've won the Inner Circle Award from Microsoft for the past 5 years running, which is just speaking to our reputation in the market. The Inner Circle Award is only given to the top 2% of partners within the Dynamics Circle, so we're very proud of that. My name is Charlotte McCormick. I today am taking the role of a lean architect, and I'm going to take you through a lot of the solution that we have in Standard AX. I work out of our Atlanta office for eBECS North America, and I've been working with AX since 10 years. So I started with version 3. I actually worked for a customer called WICA up in Lawrenceville, Georgia, where we implemented the first lean manufacturing module that existed in version 3. eBECS has an interesting history with the lean module. We actually created it in version 3. We upgraded it to version 4. We then sold it to Microsoft in version 2009, and they have since upgraded it to 2012. So we're the original founders of the lean manufacturing module in AX, and we have done a lot of investment around our own internal skill set, but also some of the IP that we still produce and sell on top of AX, on top of the standard lean modules, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit at the end of the presentation. So our agenda today, I'm going to give you an introduction to what AX lean manufacturing is. Then we're going to take a deep dive into a make-to-stock scenario. I'm going to set the scene, and then we're going to go into AX, and I'll show you how that scenario works. Then we're going to go into a make-to-order scenario. Same thing, I'm going to set the scene, and then we're going to go take a look inside of AX 2012. And then I'll just follow up towards the end with some of our add-on solutions that I mentioned at eBECS, and then some next steps, and we'll open it up to questions and answers. If you have a question throughout, please go ahead and use the question feature of GoToWebinar. Everybody is muted right now just for the sake of keeping the flow, but if you do have a question, I will try and monitor the GoToWebinar questions. So I always like to kick this off with, why do companies go to lean software? A lot of times there's this whole dichotomy of the pure lean consultant who says throw out the ERP system, and then you've got the extreme end of it, which is complete ERP masters who say run master planning and do job scheduling, and the two conflict a lot. So we kind of sit at that intersection of the two because we are an ERP reseller and implementer, but we really understand lean philosophy. And so these are some of the reasons that our customers go to lean software. I won't go through all of these, but I will highlight a few. So I think the number one is around transparency throughout an organization. When you can start to break down those departmental silos and share information across the value stream, really, where sales is talking to production, is talking to the customer, is talking to purchasing, you again, just cut down those organizational silos, and I'll show you one way that AX helps you do that. On top of that, when you use lean with an ERP system, you have a ton of data, and that is really useful. It can do things like help you calculate Kanban levels because you can take all of your historic demand, and if you choose to enter a forecast, you could look at future possibilities and start to calculate your Kanban levels that way. It also helps bridge the entire supply chain. So if you're using purchase Kanban, for an example, you could have a portal that seamlessly communicates with your ERP system. So you're really just pulling together the entire organization. Not only do you have a bunch of historical data, but you have a lot of meaningful, actionable data inside of ERP as well. So you can start to build things like KPIs on top of the BI dashboards in AX. So it's very, very powerful. And on that KPI subject, I was just going to show you, this is one of the boards that we built actually for WICA, where I used to work. And this is a BI dashboard that's just sitting inside of their shipping department, and it's really useful for them because they can see how many orders, because they're very make-to-order driven, how many make-to-order orders they have left to ship for the day, and if they've hit their on-time performance measures, or how many make-to-stock items they have to pull off the shelf and ship for the day. So their goal is to get all of this done within the day, and they don't leave until they do. And it just shows you in real time what's going on. Of those make-to-orders, you can then see the status of them. So for example, there's one here that you can see that's probably still inside of manufacturing that needs to be finished manufacturing before they can pick it up. So it's a very useful, actionable way to get data out of an ERP system, but maintain the whole visual on-the-floor premise of Lean. So what is Lean in AX 2012? I always describe it as 4 things. It's pull, it's build to order, it's visual, and it's mixed mode. So to begin with, pull. What do I mean by that? AX inherently has the capability to set up Kanban rules. And these Kanban rules and variants allow you to introduce real pull throughout the organization. The standard types, which I'll go into as well, are production, which just means when the signal is empty, make something. Withdraw, which means when the signal is empty, pull something, traditionally from, think of a raw material warehouse to the line side. Or subcontracting, when the signal is empty, I actually need to take a product and get it, have some kind of an outside process occur to it before I can fill it. So an outside process could be painting or sterilization or coating, whatever that may be. Lean manufacturing is build to order. So these Kanban rules that are set up in AX are very flexible, and you can configure them in a build to order environment. So the whole concept is only build it where it's needed, when it's needed. This lets you do things like manage a high number of variants with low WIP. And we do this in AX through what we call event-driven Kanbans, which are very cool. They basically wait until something happens in AX, so i.e. it could be a sales order. So don't do anything until I have a sales order in the system, and then build it just to that sales order. Within this, we have something called drumbeat control, which helps with the capacity. And this is also multi-level build to order. So I might have a final assembly and a sub-assembly or a feeder child assembly cell, and I can manage that throughout the BOM level chain in AX. Lean is also very visual. So what you see right here on this slide are some of the boards that we're going to be looking at today. You'll notice a lot of colors. You will notice the bottom work instructions that are sitting right there in AX, red, greens. This is meant to bring a lot of the visual aids that you would find useful on the shop floor to the shop floor for your organization. And it's also mixed mode planning and execution. So what I mean by that is you can literally set up different pieces of your organization using different, what I call building blocks in AX. For example, some parts it might make sense to load a forecast, run master planning, firm a planned purchase order, and drive off of that. Some parts you might want to introduce pull. You can do that by part number and by warehouse in AX, so a very powerful tool. Same concept. You might have some, you might truly be a mixed mode organization where you have a refinery. You probably would want to use something in AX called process manufacturing for that. And then you pull that to a final assembly where you've got a lean work cell, true work cell, where you would introduce some of the lean concepts. You can do that in AX. At the top level, I might want to drive certain products by forecast. I might want to drive them certain products by just a sales order and make to order environment. Or I might want to have some products under a make to stock Kanban, or I might want to have some products under a min-max thing. It's very configurable, and therefore I call a lot of this building blocks, which you're going to see as I go throughout the demonstrations. This is everything that is inside of Microsoft Dynamics AX standard lean manufacturing. What we're going to talk about today, we're going to start with something called a production flow. That's very important from an organizational structure. It's how everything in lean manufacturing works. You've got true work cells set up straight in AX, and then you have a ton of different Kanban tools, which we're going to go through. Another thing that I want to mention at this point that's part of the production flow is it comes with a different costing mechanism than the standard manufacturing would in AX. And so it's a production flow costing, periodic costing, using standard costing in the background concept. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we go to a production flow. You can model value streams in AX as operating units to start to get some true lean accounting if you are that far on your journey. It uses a financial dimension in AX, which then lets you do things like create a profit and loss by value stream, which is a very cool concept. And just a ton of great Kanban-driven make-to-stock, make-to-order scenarios that you can use in AX. Again, building blocks. So think of it, use it in your organization where it makes sense to. So a production flow. A production flow is basically all of the steps that it takes for a product to go from raw materials to be manufactured to be sold. And this is a very simple production flow I have up here. I have, for example, a stockroom. So I would take raw material and I would pull it to my assembly cell using a withdrawal Kanban. I would make it through assembly. I would put it into a warehouse and then I would ship it to a customer. So this is actually modeled in AX, and this is the scenario we're going to be looking at today. So in AX, my production flow would say, I want to transfer items from the stockroom to the assembly cell. That would be a transfer activity. And then I'd have a process activity called, I want to assemble this item. Once I've defined my set of activities, I then build the Kanban rules on top, which control, okay, this item is going to be moved from the stockroom to the line side, or this product is going to be produced using a production Kanban on top of this process activity called assembly. So the production flow is the steps that it takes for that product to go through your factory. And it's important because, one, we're defining how that works. There's no longer a route, for example, in Lean and AX. You use this production flow concept. It's also the cost accumulator. So if I wanted to do some true Lean costing, I could only look at my inputs and outputs. You don't have to do that, but you could. And on top of that, we're building our Kanban rules. One thing that I do want to quickly mention is that AX Lean is fully integrated with planning. That's a very unique thing, and it's something that came with 2012. So for example, I could run MRP and spit out planned Kanbans. I'm not sure, the only scenario I can think of for that would be like a new product introduction, where I want to look at a forecast and I want to then drive my production schedule, and then at some point in time you might go back to a more repetitive fixed Kanban approach. On top of that, what is super important to understand is that MRP actually sees an item and understand that it's under Kanban control. So if it's under a fixed Kanban, for example, it knows to leave that out. This item is under Kanban control. I don't need to go through the normal mechanisms. But it maintains that relationship. So if there's a purchase part underneath that, it knows to buy that to a forecast, for example. So it's truly integrated into MRP, which is very, very powerful. So I mentioned building blocks. These are the building blocks we're going to get in today. We're going to look at a couple different Kanban variants. So fixed quantity Kanbans, sales event Kanbans, and Kanban line events. We're going to look at production and withdrawal Kanbans, and I'm going to I'll at least explain some of the boards that exist and the calculations that exist in standard AX. So our first demonstration is going to be around a make-to-stock scenario using Kanbans in AX. So I keep talking about these things called Kanbans. What are they? I think most of the people on this call, if you signed up for a lean manufacturing webinar, understands what a Kanban pull signal is. But how do they translate to AX? If you look at the graphic here, there's really two types of Kanbans in standard AX. There's production and there's withdrawal. So again, a production Kanban, if my signal is empty, I'm going to make something. Withdrawal Kanban, if the signal is empty, I'm going to move material from one warehouse location to another warehouse location. On top of that, we have these things called replenishment strategies. So if you look at the top of this graphic, you've got make-to-stock versus make-to-order strategies. On the far left is what we call a fixed Kanban. So that is a very simple concept. Think of a 2-bin system or a 3-bin system where bin is empty, bin is full, bin is empty, bin is full. We want to have 3 bins in circulation at all times, or 5, depending on how we calculate that. The far right is that make-to-order scenario where we use event-driven Kanbans. So that means do absolutely nothing in the system until an event is triggered, and only then do you execute against it. The perfect example, which I'm going to take you through, is a sales order is raised. When that sales order is raised, that's when I'm going to produce to that sales order. So pure make to order. And we can do that down the BOM chain. So we could have what's called a Kanban line event. When the material is needed, only pull the material then down the BOM level of that finished good. Perfect scenario, if you guys are familiar with runners, repeaters, and strangers, these let you model that by part number inside of AX. Okay, so briefly I'm going to go through those major replenishment strategies again. Fixed quantity Kanban, this is, think of your fixed number of bins in circulation, your 2-bin system. One is empty, one is full, it's empty, it's full. We can calculate these in AX. Schedule Kanban. This is where I was talking, you can literally have MRP calculate the demand it sees based on all of the standard MRP settings, and then spit out what we call planned Kanbans that get turned into Kanbans. So great example of this might be a new product introduction. We don't have a historical demand that we can calculate a fixed stock on. We also don't want to make to order because we need to ramp up immediately. So I could plug in a forecast and it would then drill through and create Kanbans. And we have event Kanbans. Do nothing in AX until I have a signal. That signal could be a sales order, it could be upper level Kanban demand, it could be upper level production order demand. And we have several Kanban boards that I'm about to show you inside of AX. The first is a Kanban schedule board. So that can be used for production order leveling, or as some people might know it, as a Hyanka board. It is looking at days and capacity. Then we have the Kanban board for process jobs. This is what would actually be out in the shop floor that you could execute against. And then we have the same board for transfer jobs. So think of a water spider or a warehouse worker using the transfer board. So, hope everyone can see my screen because we're about to go through a demonstration in AX. We've got a simple part number, LE assembly make to stock, which we're going to make. We're going to make it using a production Kanban. Then we have a component called LE component 2, which we're going to pull to the line side assembly to take that material and turn it into our finished good. So again, underneath here, I've shown you what a sample production flow would look like inside of AX. We would have a transfer activity from the stock room to the line side. For our LE component 2, we would set up a withdrawal Kanban. And since this is make to stock, I've set it up as a fixed Kanban. On our finished good level, for this LE assembly make to stock item, I have a certain number of bins sitting in the assembly warehouse. When they're empty, I'm going to trigger production via production Kanban onto the assembly process that would then complete production, fill the stock, and eventually we would ship it to the customer. All right, so what you're looking at right here is Dynamics AX. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is just standard plain AX 2012 R3. And on the top, you've got all of the modules of AX. What we're concerned about today is mostly production. So inside of the standard production module in AX, you've got all of the lean manufacturing capabilities. So in our scenario, we have a make to stock scenario. So I am going to start by looking at my Kanban board for process jobs. This is that board, again, that is looking at one work cell. So I am logged into my assembly work cell. And this could be put, think of it as a board that manages the actual production. So I've seen it on a shop floor just open at the end of a work cell. Now, one of the cool things you can do is actually take a look at your Kanban status. So in this example, this is just a Kanban board that's sitting electronically in AX. I have 3 products. I've got LE prod, LE finished, and LE assembly make to stock. This is the Kanban and the item that we're looking at today. So what I can tell is I have 2 full bins. I just have a 2-bin system. Each of these represents a certain quantity. And it's now, in this instance, sitting in the stock room and it's full. So what happens? Well, first of all, I probably have a Kanban ticket sitting on this item. Here's an example of what a Kanban ticket looks like in AX. And I might take this little barcode and I would probably have it affixed to a bin. And this has a string to it that represents this unique Kanban. So it's for LE assembly make to stock, and it has 5 pieces each. When it's empty, I know that it goes to this work cell to be completed. So picture yourself sitting in the finished goods stock room, and I'm a warehouse worker, and I just pull out the final 5 pieces of this Kanban, and I'm going to go ahead and scan it empty. So in AX, all of the boards work with just a basic scan wedger, and I'm going to set my scan mode up here to empty, and I'm going to pretend like I am scanning that ticket. So what was the number on it? It was 000549. 000549. So I've now scanned my Kanban ticket empty. What happens? In real time, there's no batch job that occurs. You saw it on the screen. It sends that signal back to my work cell, my assembly work cell. And it says to make 5 of these. Now there's some really useful information that AX has. First, I can attach production instructions for making this product. So again, think of lean, visual. You might have standard work already set up for an item. We can now put it in AX and just display it on the board. This is also useful for things like drawings if you want to display that to the actual production worker. I can also see a couple other things like my picking list. So this is my component that I need to manufacture my make to stock item, and I can tell I need 5. And in true visual nature, I can see I have this on hand. If I did not, it would have a big fat X. So I know what I'm doing, I'm looking at my production instructions, I follow it, I assemble the item, I know I've got my materials to make this. There's a couple ways to handle this. I could, as the shop floor, just hit this complete button. I could scan it complete. If I need more statuses in between, I could prepare, I could start, I could do a couple status updates to the Kanban if I needed to, but ultimately we're going to keep it simple and we're just going to say complete. So what did I do? In real time, I completed that Kanban. If we go back and look at our Kanban board again, it's now got the check mark that says complete. And in all of AX, we've maintained the integrity of transactions. So I've back flushed or forward flushed, I've written on the finished good, and it's now sitting in a warehouse location to be shipped. All right, so I know that I used 5 of my materials, and now we're going to look at the raw material side of this. So here's my component 2, and I have 2 full bins sitting at my line side. Since these are fixed Kanbans, the situation is the same. I would go ahead and let's pop open this component. I could print a Kanban ticket. For now, I'm just going to hit the empty button. But again, could be a 2-bin system. I scan that ticket because it's empty, or the water spider scans it. And what happens? 1, we'll just look and show that my Kanban board updates. So I now have 1 empty ticket. And also, that ticket shows up on my Kanban board for transferred jobs in real time. So let me go ahead and refresh that. What you'll see is the warehouse now has a signal that says, I used 5 of these, my bin is empty, please fill me. The bin could physically go back to the warehouse, or it could just be an electronic signal. Companies use different ways of doing that. I could print a picking list and go find all of them and group things together, or ultimately I just come here and yep, I see I've got stock, I go find the bin location of that stock and I complete it. I could start and complete it, but all I have to do is complete it. So when I complete this, what AX is doing is it's transferring that material from one warehouse location to another warehouse location, and it's filling that bin. So again, we've got this concept of Kanban boards. So now I have 2 full bins again. And these Kanban boards are really nice because you could, in theory, get rid of, if you have manual Kanban boards on the floor, this shows you in real time what's going on. And again, when I mentioned transparency, think about it, you could have this, you could look at this sitting in a back office and see exactly what's going on in real time with all of your Kanbans by work cell, all of your make-to-stock Kanbans by shipment. I mean, it's a very, very powerful tool. The other thing is what we call the Kanban schedule board. So what you were looking at before were the execution boards, and the schedule board is more of a scheduling tool. Can also be used for level loading. So what I'm looking at is the Kanban schedule board for my work cell assembly. Let me just get a refreshed version of this. And what you see here is each day and a capacity per day. So Lean uses a throughput-based capacity. I've set up this work cell to be able to do 100. And each of these products can take a certain ratio of that. So, think of, you might have one drumbeat type product that you're constantly doing. You would probably set that as 1. Then you might have something that takes twice as long, so you'd have a ratio of 2. So it just multiplies the ratio by the quantity, and that's how it's calculating the capacity per product. So there's my capacity, and I've consumed 12 of those. Down here, I can see all of my Kanbans that are in a status of unplanned. So this is an optional thing. You could always just in real time, when the signal is empty, put it straight to the shop floor, or alternately, you could take it to what we call a Kanban post. And I think I have a graphic that explains this. Yeah. So if you look here, this is really the concept of a Kanban scheduling board. Instead of going straight to the assembly cell, which is what we just showed, when a Kanban is empty, it goes to a scheduling board or post to be scheduled, and then once scheduled, shows up on the assembly cell. This is extremely useful if you think of it in a make-to-order, make-to-stock scenario. So I might, for example, have all of my make-to-order sales orders loaded right on the assembly cell, and I might use my make-to-stock product to level load that, so eat up spare capacity that I have. So let's take a look back. So here we go. Here's my unplanned orders. And all I do is simply drag it onto exactly when I want to plan it. And what it's doing is as soon as I drag that on, it will show up on my board, if I had the process board open. So it now shows up to be made. And the other neat thing about it is that you can actually sequence material as well with it. So if I drop a yellow, a pink, and then my other yellow, this is the exact sequence that production will see to make it. Now the colors are interesting. So the colors are actually a way, and I mean the yellow and the pink, they're a grouping mechanism. They're very configurable, so you can kind of set them up with however you want to do it. I've seen people use the colors to represent things like products that are similar, that have similar setups. So you might have a certain diameter that you want to put the products against, and so you would then schedule all of the pinks together and then all of the yellows together to reduce setup. I've seen them as certain major customer types so that production knows what's going on, but they're fully configurable. You just have a group and then the items go under that group. The other colors on this board are the reds and the greens. So I can set up this Kanban board and each Kanban rule to say I've got a minimum and a maximum. And when the world is happy, my items shift to the bottom. So you can see here that I have 2 full bins of this make-to-stock product. It is not a priority. You should not focus on this. What you should focus on is up here, my LE finished, because I can see I'm still in the red, and this Kanban is not planned. So I have 1 planned and 3 unplanned, and I'm in the red. So this is the item that you should focus on first. Now this changes in real time. So as I schedule these, you can see it actually dropped to the bottom, and now my focus should be on the product LE prod. So it's a dynamic way to help a scheduler figure out what is the most important item at the time. Okay, so we just took a look at our two scenarios. The first was a pure make to stock scenario. My bin is empty, went onto the assembly cell, I made it. My component was empty, went to the warehouse, and I replenished it from the warehouse. In the second scenario, my Kanban scheduling board. So our product was empty, it didn't go straight to the work cell, it went to the board, and then I scheduled it on the board. One last thing to mention in this make to stock, this make to stock scenario is that we can actually calculate the levels of Kanban in AX in real time. And this is the calculation you see at hand. Again, you can look historically at average, what we call fulfilled demand, or we can look forward at forward demand, but ultimately we're just calculating an average daily demand. We're multiplying that by the lead time of the product, and then we're cutting it by the Kanban quantity. And there are some cool things you can do around safety stock and other more advanced measures. But if I look at the bottom here, I can see I calculated it for my item. It found two different types of demand, historical looking backwards and a time frame that I set per item, forward looking at a time set that I set per item, how many is in each bin, and then it gives me the number of bins that I should have in circulation. So it's a very, very powerful tool to help you implement Kanban electronically in your shop floor. Okay, now we're going to move on to make to order. So Lean is also build to order. Make it when you need it, where you need it. And we use sales event Kanbans and event-driven Kanbans for this. So our scenario right now, very similar, except for instead of making it to stock, we're going to enter a sales order. That sales order is going to load immediately onto the assembly cell. Now, I'm not going to show you this because for sake of time, but there is something called capable to promise, which is an extremely powerful tool in a make-to-order scenario. It basically calculates the delivery date that you should promise your customer using material availability and capacity availability. So the really cool thing about this is, what does a customer want? They want their material on time as soon as you can get it to them. And the struggle is you don't know if you have the parts, you don't know if you have the capacity. Well, AX calculates all that for you with some advanced setups. And in real time, when you save that order, it can give the best date to the customer. And then you just execute against that plan. All right, so we have a top-level item, LE assembly make to order, and that has one component called LE base. So I'm going to get into AX, and we're going to start off this scenario with a sales order. So this is just a standard sales order in AX, and I went ahead and created the header. So we're just going to enter an item. My item is LE assembly make to order. Again, make however many you need. So this can be to the point of only make 8 for this one customer. There's some settings around that if it doesn't make sense. But as soon as I save this order, it is going to show up in real time for manufacturing to make. This is when CTP would come into play if I had it configured. So what I'm viewing here is called the pegging tree. And what I'm looking at is per this sales order, we just entered that for 8. What is my status in production? So here's my Kanban. I can tell it was triggered and created in real time for my quantity 8. And if I look down here, I can start to see the status. So I can see it's scheduled for today. And if I were to want to inquire about this as a customer service rep, say a customer calls, they want to know where their order is. The rep can come in here and see in real time what's happening all the way down to the raw material level. So here's that transfer Kanban, and I can see my material hasn't been pulled from the warehouse to the shop floor. I can also see that production hasn't been done. This updates in real time as we execute against these Kanbans. So remember when I was talking about breaking down departmental silos? We just broke one down from customer to customer service rep to production to the warehouse. All right, so let's execute against this. If I go back to first my Kanban board for process jobs, and I refresh, I can see there is my LE assembly make to order item for 8. Same thing, production instructions. Oh, we get to the picking list. Well, I have a problem. One, I can see I don't have the material. There's my red X. And it makes sense that I don't have material because we're pulling this to order. Again, we're out of that make to stock 2-bin scenario. We're into a pure make to order scenario and pull to order scenario. So my component is pulled based on the demand being present of this Kanban. It's called a Kanban line event. And so as soon as I save that sales order, I've configured AX to go all the way down the bottom chain. And there is my signal for the warehouse to pull these bases and take them to production. This is also tied directly to that sales order. So we're maintaining that true link all the way up and down the chain. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend that I'm a warehouse worker, and I'm going to pull these 8 bases. Oh, this is a batch controlled item. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and tell it which batch number I've pulled. And this is nice because since it's a pure sales order link, sales order Kanban link, once I've picked this batch number in a true traceable environment, it is registering that this batch number is going into this production. And I can use the traceability functions in AX to show that batch traceability. All right, so we're back to production. Yep, I've got my materials and I can go ahead and manufacture this. Once I've made it, again, it's to order. So I would, in my production flow, tell that to go to the shipping warehouse. And if we go back to our sales order line, and whoops. And if I say, again, customer calls, what's going on with my order, I can see, oh, production has been completed as of today for the right quantity. You know, it should be shipped momentarily. You'll get it on time. So real-time status updates all the way through. All right. That was our make-to-order scenario. Again, sales order drives production on the assembly cell and pull to order. So we only pull the materials that we need to the assembly cell. Again, that runners, repeaters, strangers model, and going back to those Kanban replenishment strategies, I've seen a lot of times where, you know, if you've got strangers sitting at the line side, it doesn't make sense. You might not have space, you might not have room, so you would put those in the raw material warehouse and pull them only when you need them, even if this is a make-to-stock or a make-to-stock scenario. So it's really mix and match. It's really building blocks. All right, that wraps up our scenarios for today. I do want to tell you about some of the solutions that we have that sit on top of AX. So, you know, we have a true innovation group that is constantly innovating on top of the Standard Dynamics AX platform. Some of the things I just wanted to mention, and I will not spend a ton of time on these. I will open it up to Q&A afterwards. So we've got what we call our lean manufacturing extensions. We have an engineering change management module. We've got some Power BI connectors to AX, a data modeler that helps with implementation, and some discrete manufacturing templates. So what you saw today was standard lean. What we have developed on top of this is a lot of supply chain features. So for example, purchase Kanban. Standard AX doesn't come with that. We've created that out, and we also have a portal where the vendor could log in and see all the Kanbans they have to action. Using the same premise of what you saw today with production flows, Kanban rules, just when the bin is empty, it goes all the way back to the vendor. We've also done some quality integration with lean. So in standard lean manufacturing, you cannot use what we call quality associations. So what this lets us do is if we for some reason need to do inspection, like a final inspection if you're in a more regulated environment, we can now tie that to a Kanban. We have some enhanced reporting, especially around a lot of the lean accounting features, and we've built out some long-term capacity planning if you're into the sales and operations planning process. This is just a picture of our purchase Kanban board. And again, this hooks into a portal, so the vendor could log into the standard enterprise portal that comes with AX and execute against your Kanban signals. We also have an engineering change management solution. So this is very much for those as a link between engineering and production. So you probably are very familiar with this. You know, you might be doing designs in a PLM system, and we have to get that now introduced into AX. So we've got an engineering module that lets you do that inside of AX. It's got workflows. It can show impact analysis to say, if I introduce this change, it's going to affect these purchase orders that are open. We also have a rapid return data modeler and dashboard feature. So if you guys have seen Power BI, Power BI is a really powerful reporting tool that's a Microsoft-based tool. It doesn't connect very well with AX. So what we did was we did all of the legwork to get dashboards running straight out of AX. And you can see that here. I'm looking at, I guess, sales or purchases by vendor. I can use Power BI to configure it, but we're pulling all of the data from AX. And we have an ERP data modeler. So this helps with implementations where you might have the need to customize. We've just really made this tool a very consultant-friendly tool where we can create new forms straight from the modeler. And we have some manufacturing accelerators. So Lifecycle Services is a very cool feature that comes with AX. You get it as a customer, and it's got a lot of powerful features, especially as you go down the version 7 route. So we've built templates in Lifecycle Services to help with the implementation, and we've also done a lot around just accelerating the implementation with our data modeler and some of the pre-configured tools that we have. So upcoming webinars, there are a lot more great content webinars coming up. Please visit our website. These are some that I can see in the next coming month. We also will be at several events. So we'll be at Envision in the beginning of April, the Lean Summit in Atlanta in May, and then we are part of the AX user group, so we will be at their Focus and their Summit events. If you come to any of these, please stop by and say hi. And then really next steps from here, we've got a couple things on. We do things like an upgrade proof of concept. We just finished one with Britax a couple months ago and did a case study on that. You can see that on our website. We're doing this now for version 7, so if you're on a later version of AX and you're thinking about going to version 7, we come in and do a full-blown proof of concept that shows you what you're going to get out of it and how long it's going to take you. And then if you're in a situation right now where you're already implementing AX, we do audits, so it might be that you're not sure of a design decision that was taken, or you might be live and really just need help, so we can help you there as well. All right, so now I'm going to open it up to questions.